Picture this. You're settling into a long flight.
Oh, the best feeling.
Right. Maybe you use those miles you've been hoarding, you scored an upgrade, and you finally have a little extra leg room, the cabin light's dim, you've got your noise-canceling headphones on, and you are just relaxed.
Setting the scene perfectly.
But then suddenly, your phone slips out of your hand. It slides right down the side of the seat cushion and just vanishes into that dark crevice.
Oh, I hate that.
We all do. And your absolute first instinct, without even thinking, is to shove your hand down in there to grab it. I mean, it's an automatic reflex.
It really is, yeah.
But what if I told you that giving into that simple, everyday reflex could actually bring down the entire aircraft?
It sounds like an exaggeration, right?
Completely.
But we are looking at a very real, very physical threat here. I mean, we're talking about a sequence of events that can escalate from a minor annoyance into a catastrophic mid-flight emergency in under 3 minutes.
Which is wild to think about. And today, in this deep dive, our mission is to look at the exact mechanical and chemical chain reaction hiding underneath your seat cushion. We pulled an amazing article that features expert insights on aviation safety, lithium-ion batteries, and FAA protocols.
It's a great source. Really breaks down the science.
Yeah, and we are going to use it to give you a highly counterintuitive rule that you absolutely need to know for your next flight.
Because the stakes are, well, they couldn't be higher.
So to really understand the mechanics of this, we have to look at the physical environment of a modern airplane cabin. Think about the story from our source of a passenger who recently treated themselves to a cushy business class seat on an international long-haul flight.
Oh, right. The upgrade.
Exactly. They upgraded from cramped coach, they had the reclining back, the mechanical footrest, the works. But the plane hits a rough patch of turbulence, and the phone slips off the wide armrest, completely disappearing into the gap.
Which happens all the time.
All the time. So when they reached down to retrieve it, their fingers brushed against unseen metal gears and moving parts, prompting them to just, yank their hand back before it got caught.
And pulling away was absolutely the right move. I mean, passengers tend to view their seats just as comfortable chairs.
Because they look like chairs.
Right. But an aircraft seat, particularly in business or first class, is a highly complex piece of heavy machinery. It is designed to do two very different things.
Okay.
First, it has to articulate seamlessly, right? Moving a passenger through various resting positions thousands of times a year. And second, and definitely more importantly, it has to act as a primary safety device.
Right, for crashes.
Exactly. The Federal Aviation Administration requires these seats to withstand upwards of 16 Gs of force during an impact.
Wait, 16 Gs?
Yeah, 16 times the force of gravity.
Okay, let's unpack this. A 16 G impact means that seat has to hold a human being in place while experiencing 16 times the force of gravity. So the framework underneath you isn't just like aluminum tubes and foam.
Far from it. To withstand those forces while still being adjustable, the base of the seat is literally packed with high-torque electric motors, thick steel tracks, worm gears, and heavy pivot points.
Jeez.
Yeah. It's a dense network of moving parts carrying hundreds of pounds of structural weight.
So reaching blindly into an automated airplane seat is essentially like playing blindfolded operation inside a garbage disposal.
Yeah.
You literally have no idea what sharp, moving metal piece you're about to touch.
That is a highly accurate analogy. I love that. But the structural danger to your hand is actually just the secondary issue here.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The primary threat to the aircraft is what happens if those unseen high-torque steel gears catch your drop device instead of your fingers. Because the motors driving those tracks are incredibly powerful.
So they won't just stop if something is in the way?
Not at all. If you push the recline button to try and open up the gap, the motor doesn't know there's a phone in the way. It just keeps pushing. And when a steel gear crushes a modern device, it unleashes a chemical chain reaction that is notoriously difficult to stop, especially in a pressurized tube flying across the ocean.
We're talking about anything with a lithium-ion battery, right?
Yeah. Not
just cell phones, but laptops, tablets, handheld gaming consoles, even like an electric toothbrush.
Exactly. Any device relying on lithium-ion technology, if it falls into that mechanical abyss and gets pinched by the seat mechanism, you suddenly have a severe volatile hazard on board.
This is where we need to dive into the chemistry of it all, because lithium-ion batteries are kind of these tiny miracles of modern engineering. I mean, they're in our pockets all day.
Right.
But I need some clarification. My phone gets hot when I watch too many high-definition videos, or if I leave it on the dashboard of my car in the afternoon sun.
We've all done that.
Yeah, and it doesn't catch fire. It just gives me a little temperature warning on the screen and shuts down. So why does crushing it make such a catastrophic difference?
That is the big question. And to answer that, we have to look inside the battery casing. Electrochemist and battery safety expert Paul Christensen breaks this down beautifully in the article.
He's the globally recognized professor, right?
He is, yeah. And he explains that a lithium-ion battery stores a massive amount of energy in a very compact space. Inside that small rectangle, you have an anode and a cathode, the positive and negative sides.
Okay, tracking so far.
And they are packed incredibly close together. The only thing keeping them apart is a microscopically thin, permeable membrane called a separator. And all of this is just bathed in a highly flammable liquid electrolyte.
So it's essentially a tightly wound package of highly reactive materials separated by a fragile physical barrier.
Exactly. So when your phone gets hot from watching a video, the battery is just working hard, the energy is flowing normally, and those internal physical barriers are fully intact.
And the software just shuts it down to save it.
Right. The software recognizes the heat and shuts the device down to cool off. But when a steel seat gear crushes or punctures the battery casing, it physically shreds that microscopic separator membrane.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so the anode and the cathode physically touch.
Which creates a short circuit.
A dead short. All of the chemical energy stored in that battery suddenly has no designated pathway to follow. So it dumps instantly into that flammable liquid electrolyte.
Wow.
The result is a highly exothermic chemical reaction.
Exothermic meaning the reaction itself generates its own heat.
Massive amounts of heat, actually, and very large quantities of gas. The solvent inside the battery begins to boil and vaporize.
Which doesn't sound good in a tiny metal casing.
It's not. This triggers what Professor Christensen calls thermal runaway. It's a self-feeding feedback loop. The damaged battery gets intensely hot.
Okay.
That heat breaks down the internal components further, which releases more energy. That released energy increases the heat again, which vaporizes more solvent, raising the internal pressure of the battery casing until it just ruptures.
So the device is actively fueling its own destruction. It's not a slow burn.
No, it is an incredibly aggressive escalation. Professor Christensen notes that, and I'm using his exact quote here, temperatures rise and reactions become self-sustaining. At some point, the battery could ignite.
But ignite doesn't mean like a spark or a flickering candle flame.
Not at all. The pressurized, boiling gas violently escapes the casing and catches fire. Christensen describes failing batteries as having flames that literally rocket from the device.
Rocket from the device.
Yes, it is a blowtorch effect, a jet of fire shooting directly out of the crushed phone.
Okay, when you hear a phrase like rocketing flames or thermal runaway, it sounds like a lab experiment. Like something researchers test in a concrete bunker just to see what happens.
It really does.
But this isn't theoretical. This is happening on commercial flights right now.
It is an active, ongoing crisis. I mean, keeping in mind that today is April 20th, 2026, we only have to look back a few weeks to see how frequently this plays out in the skies.
Yeah, let's walk through the logistics of a real-world incident from March 25th of this year. There was a United Express flight operated by Mesa Airlines heading to Houston.
Right, I remember this one.
A passenger's lithium-ion battery was crushed and began to smoke in the cabin.
And a smoking battery at 30,000 feet is an immediate critical emergency. The pilots had to declare an emergency with air traffic control and actually divert the flight to San Antonio.
And think about what diverting a flight actually means for a second. You can't just pull over to the side of the road.
Right.
The pilots have to rapidly descend, coordinate with air traffic controllers to clear the airspace around them, and maneuver a heavy aircraft to a completely different airport, all while the cabin crew is fighting a potential fire.
It's a huge operation.
You have emergency response vehicles scrambling on the tarmac, hundreds of passengers disrupted, all because of one compromised battery.
And in that United Express incident, they managed to land the plane relatively quickly. The situation can escalate much further if the thermal runaway reaches ignition before the plane is on the ground.
Right.
Look at an incident from just a month prior on February 22nd, 2026. This was an Alaska Airlines flight traveling from Wichita to Seattle.
Oh man, on that flight, a cell phone and a power bank overheated and fully ignited.
Yes.
The cabin literally filled with smoke, and a passenger was actually burned. The pilots had to turn the plane around and race back to Wichita. The sheer panic of that scenario is really hard to overstate.
Absolutely terrifying.
You are in a pressurized tube, miles above the earth. The ventilation system is struggling against thick, toxic smoke, and there is a localized jet of fire in the seating area.
And the smoke from a lithium-ion fire isn't just blinding. It contains a cocktail of toxic chemicals, including carbon monoxide and hydrogen fluoride.
Which is incredibly dangerous to breathe.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is precisely why aviation authorities are incredibly rigid about where these batteries can be stored.
Right.
The Federal Aviation Administration strictly mandates that travelers keep all spare lithium batteries and portable chargers in their carry-on baggage. They are banned from the cargo hold.
Wait, I've always found that rule completely counterintuitive.
A lot of people do.
Right. Because if these things are essentially miniature incendiary devices just waiting to be crushed, why does the FAA force us to bring them up into the cabin? Shouldn't they be locked away in the cargo hold, as far away from the passengers as possible?
It seems backwards until you consider the specific physics of a thermal runaway fire. Commercial aircraft cargo holds are equipped with automated fire suppression systems.
Okay.
These systems typically use halon gas to displace the oxygen in the hold and smother a fire. So if a suitcase full of clothes catches fire, the halon puts it out. But a lithium-ion battery fire is fundamentally different.
How so?
As the cathode breaks down during thermal runaway, it actually releases oxygen.
Wait, so the battery is generating its own oxygen supply while it burns?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Meaning a halon suppression system, which relies on starving a fire of oxygen, is highly ineffective against a lithium-ion fire.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, if a spare battery gets crushed under the weight of hundreds of other suitcases in the belly of the plane, it can ignite, burn through neighboring luggage, and start a massive structural fire completely hidden from the crew.
That's terrifying.
By the time the pilots realize the suppression system has failed, it might be too late to land the plane.
So the cabin rule is entirely about visibility and response time. Keep the threat where you can see it, smell it, and fight it.
In the cabin, a flight attendant can spot a wisp of smoke instantly. The crew can physically access the device and take action before the heat compromises the aircraft's fuselage.
Though, the FAA does still allow devices with installed lithium-ion batteries like laptops or tablets in checked bags, but only provided they are completely powered off and protected from accidental activation.
Correct.
Because tucked inside a padded suitcase, they aren't exposed to the heavy mechanical gears of an articulating seat.
Exactly right. The danger really arises when the active device meets the machinery. Which brings us to the most critical takeaway for anyone listening.
The most important part.
Knowing that a drop phone can ground a flight and understanding the terrifying self-oxygenating chemistry of thermal runaway, what is the actual protocol when your phone slips into the void?
The golden rule. If there is one thing you remember from this deep dive, let it be this. Do not force your hand in to get it. And whatever you do not press the recline button to try and open up the gap.
Seriously.
Do not try to move the seat.
Moving the seat is the catalyst for disaster. The moment you press that button, you engage the high-torque motors.
And it's over.
You activate the worm gears. You shift the heavy steel tracks. If the phone is resting against any of those components, the seat mechanism will crush it with hundreds of pounds of force.
So what should people do?
The instant your device drops out of sight, freeze. Leave the seat controls completely alone.
You just have to swallow your pride and hit the call bell.
Yeah.
Notify a flight attendant immediately. I know nobody wants to be the person who rings the bell to say, I dropped my phone.
Yeah.
But you have to do it.
You really do. Flight crews are not just customer service representatives. They are highly trained safety professionals.
Right.
Part of their rigorous training involves understanding the specific mechanical layouts of the airplane seats in their cabin. They study the schematics.
Well, they actually study the seats.
Oh, yeah. They know exactly where the blind spots are, where the dangerous pinch points are located, and how to safely dismantle or access tight spaces without triggering the crushing gears.
But what if you don't realize the danger in time?
Yeah.
Like what if you dropped the phone, shifted your weight, or moved the seat, and now you smell that distinct, sweet chemical odor of a venting battery?
That's a bad situation.
Or worse, you see a wisp of smoke rising from the cushion.
If you see smoke or smell chemicals, the FAA mandates that you notify the crew instantly. Do not try to fish the burning device out.
And definitely don't pour water on it.
Right. Do not try to stamp on it or throw your glass of water on it. Water can sometimes react dangerously with the internal chemistry of the battery depending on its state. And beyond that, pouring liquid into the electrical components of an airplane seat presents its own set of hazards.
Well, flight crews have specialized equipment for this exact nightmare scenario.
They do.
We have a recent example of this from a Delta flight traveling from Los Angeles to New Orleans. A passenger's wheelchair was equipped with a large lithium-ion battery, and it actually began to overheat in the cabin.
A really scary situation.
Very. But the crew didn't panic, and they didn't just dump water on it. They utilized a thermal containment bag.
Thermal containment bags are essential safety tools on modern commercial flights. Think of them as heavy-duty, high-tech, fireproof oven mitts or envelopes.
Fireproof oven mitts, I like that.
Yeah, they are constructed from specialized heat-resistant materials designed to withstand the extreme temperatures of a battery in full thermal runaway.
Okay.
The crew is trained to safely isolate the overheating device, get it inside one of these containment bags, and seal it shut.
And that locks the heat, the toxic smoke, and those rocketing flames inside an impenetrable pouch. It completely secures the threat, so the pilots can focus on getting the plane to the ground.
That level of preparedness and specialized equipment is exactly why you must defer to the flight crew. They have the physical tools and the procedural training to stop a chemical reaction from becoming a fatal, cabin-wide disaster.
Which brings us full circle to the author of the story we discussed at the very beginning.
Oh, right. The business class seat.
Yep. They dropped their phone into the seat, yanked their hand away from the moving gears, and were left staring at the gap. Even though they didn't know all the crazy chemistry we just went through, they followed the golden rule.
Which is key.
They didn't touch the recline button. They flagged down a flight attendant.
And the flight attendant didn't just reach in blindly either.
Nope.
The crew assessed the situation, realized the phone was resting near a mechanism, and actually removed a piece of the seat's structural housing.
Wow.
Yeah, they dismantled the paneling to safely extract the device without engaging the motors.
The author got their phone back in one piece, totally oblivious to the fact that by simply asking for help instead of pushing a button, they likely averted a massive emergency.
It really highlights the ultimate value of understanding the underlying mechanics of our everyday environments.
It really does.
I mean, it's one thing to be told, hey, don't move your seat if you drop your phone. It's another thing entirely to understand the 16G structural force of the seat gears, the fragile micromembranes separating the anode and cathode, and the aggressive self-oxygenating chemistry of thermal runaway.
Knowing the details changes everything.
When you know why a rule exists, it completely changes your behavior. You aren't just blindly following an instruction, you are actively participating in the structural safety of the aircraft.
It shifts your perspective from being a passive passenger to an informed participant. So let's wrap this up for you, the listener. The next time you are on a flight and you hit a patch of rough air or you're getting ready to take a nap, keep a firm grip on your phone.
Or just put it away.
Better yet, keep it securely zipped in a pocket or safely stowed away. And if the worst happens and it slips down into that dark mechanical gap beside your cushion, take a breath. Freeze.
Good advice.
Keep your hands entirely away from the recline button and hit the call bell instead. You might just be saving the entire plane from a mid-air crisis.
It is a momentary pause that has profound life-saving implications for aviation safety.
Absolutely. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We just spent this entire deep dive learning how a heavy-duty mechanical chair can crush a tiny battery casing and bring down a commercial jet.
Yeah.
But the reality is, we surround ourselves with millions of these lithium-ion batteries every single day.
Oh, everywhere.
We sleep next to them on our nightstands. We shove them deep into the articulating mechanics of our living room recliners. We toss them in the motorized trunks of our cars. They are ubiquitous. While other seemingly harmless mechanical devices in your everyday environment are just one accidental slip away from triggering thermal runaway. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll catch you next time.